What's up, YouTube? So this is a league that we actually ran on stream live yesterday. So if you want to check out the live VOD instead of watching this recap, then you can go over to the Twitch channel, which will have linked to that down below, and watch the league play out live. But honestly, it's a lot more effort to uh, download the entire VOD, cut up where you want it to be, edit out a lot of the dead time and stuff like that to make it like a 35 minute video. So it's a lot easier to honestly just record over the matches and do the play by play like this. But we played a couple Dimir Shadow Leagues on stream, went pretty well. Definitely had a fun time hanging out, chatting with people about some of the cards. So I wanted to go ahead and start uploading the videos from that, or the leagues from that. This first league, I pulled the current deck list to show here, but the first league had a copy of Defabricate in the main deck, kind of like a stifle plus counter an artifact or enchantment, and a tails in the sideboard. I'll go ahead and give you the spoiler. I did not end up casting either one of those the entire league. So that's why I just kind of decided to show this list instead. If I'd cast either of those, then maybe we have a completely different conversation. I also had a swamp instead of the hallowed fountain. And spoiler alert on that as well. There were multiple times that the mana was awkward, but you'll see that. But you'll never see me cast a Defabricate or a Tails End. But either way, if you're enjoying the commentary, enjoying the content, feel free to like the video, drop a subscription. It doesn't cost you anything on YouTube, just lets you know whenever new content comes around. Otherwise, link to the Twitch channel down below if you want to catch a live stream of this and other Shadow variants, as well as random other modern decks. We've got a link to the Discord down below if you want to come join the Control Freak Discord, talk all things modern or magic in general, or just show off your pets. Link to the Twitch below if you want to know whenever live streams are happening. Kind of like last night, we had a very impromptu stream. So if you ever want to catch those, Twitter's the first place that they go live. And yeah, let's go ahead and hop into it. So round number one, pretty decent hand. Counterspell. Counterspell with this basic swamp, though, is a little awkward. So finding a fetch off the top is nice. Before we get too far into the video, I really have to emphasize my hatred of basic swamp. It's one of those things that everybody kind of says, oh, play the basic swamp, play around Blood Moon, blah, 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 blah. And it's like the few number of times that you actually care about Blood Moon is really overshadowed by the number of times that you have basic swamp and just don't want it. Like, if there were this imaginary card zone that you could put the basic swamp in and say, hey, if I want to fetch it out, it's here, but I can never actually draw it, then it would be just like the perfect card. But you never want to actually draw the basic swamp. You only want it when you want it. So opponents on some sort of like a Grixis mid-range list. I am planning on testing out Lorien Revealed. What is it? Lorien something. The 5-mana sorcery with island cycling for 1 colorless. So situations like this, you could hard cast it, draw 3 cards, or if you're earlier in the game, you can cycle it, go find a land, and then have it in the yard exiled like Murktide. So that's on the docket to test out. We'll fight over a Terminate because opponent's down to 2 cards and we just kind of need like stuff to do. Since I see Lightning Bolt, And there's no Gigantha revealed. I'm assuming it's just like Grixis control, like Snapcaster, not Snapcaster, Counterspell, Murktide, stuff like that. So I really don't want to just like aggressively cycle Wraiths. As we can see, they are in fact a Snapcaster deck, which I honestly wasn't expecting Snapcaster, especially like Bowmaster and Ragavan and stuff. But I guess crazier things have been played. But I just remember this matchup being like extraordinarily grindy. Like you see, they're on K command Snapcaster iteration. Like they're living the Grixis control dream out here. We're living the Dimir control meme. I don't want to go down to 3 life and be dead to a bolt. But maybe with Bowmaster, like I'm not supposed to try to play around bolt that much. But anyway, on to game 2. We got to overrun that game. Game 2, just boarding out a bunch of Street Wraiths, kind of treating it like a burn-ish matchup. And then I ended up trimming a couple Thoughtseize just to go like a little bit more resilient. Bring in like the Dothies, the Turoks, I think the Fluster Storms. So we got Bowmaster me. I'm going to Bowmaster their Bowmaster. It happens every time in these Bowmaster mirrors. And I make jokes about it. But at the end of the day, like, it is probably one of the more boring things that I have seen and dealt with. Just like the Bowmaster your Bowmaster, Bowmaster your Bowmaster, the Bowmaster my Bowmaster. I'm gonna Bowmaster your Bowmaster, the Bowmaster my Bowmaster, the Bowmaster your Bowmaster. Like such Bowmaster. But regardless, we're in a position where we can just like get down a shadow. I thought about playing shadow, passing, and just having like the ability to crew up the hearse, hold up stub. But I think being a little more proactive is a bit better here. There's always the chance that my opponent's got like a damnation, or in this case, a K command plus bolt. But you know what I have? Double Shadow of Mortality, which is pretty fun on its own. So Snap terminates pretty solid, unfortunately. We just need to buy a little bit of time. So I played against a bunch of Sauron's ransom decks in the last couple days, and sometimes it looked horrible, sometimes it looked more horrible. Sometimes I punt when it comes to Sauron's ransom. For example, I'm looking at double heat, and for whatever reason, I was so positive that my opponent had delirium right now. So I was like, all right, I'm gonna hide the 2 unholy heats. If they get rid of the counterspell and the Bowmaster and take the heats, they can kill the Shadow of Mortality. But I should have just given them counterspell heat, or I probably could have actually given them like counterspell heat or something like that. Because Bowmaster's the best card in that pile by a mile against what I've got going on. Um, but I could have given them a much better pile. I just thought that they had delirium and they were going to kill me with said delirium, like, or kill my Shadow of Mortality. And it was just like a bad play all around. Because now I know they have a counter spell. So it just goes to show that anybody can punt a game on any given day. I say punt a game. We haven't lost yet. In fact, I would say John and Luck is a pretty good way to maybe get back in this. Because now we can get down Murktide and protect it from counterspell. Boop. Like if they had Lightning Bolt, they would have killed us last turn. If they had Snapcaster, they would have killed us last turn. Dress down's fine because my dudes are still beefy beaters. On to match number or on to game number 3. Still match number 1. But game 3. Again, basic swamp looking god awful with counterspell, Murktide, consider. So remember that. Like, let me pause. I know for those of you who've watched several of our videos before, you've probably heard why I dislike basic swamp so much. And it's because for all the new people watching, it's because the way that you win games with this deck is by getting to like turn 4 and having Murktide hold up counterspell. That's how you win. Like Murktide, protect the Murktide, or something to that extent. Basic Swamp does not let you do that. Look me in the eyes and tell me you hear me. Basic Swamp does not let you Murktide plus Counterspell on turn 4. Gotta stress that so much. Because I feel like people don't hear me when I say it or like don't believe it. And I get that there are so many players out there that are like, oh, well, I never draw the basic swamp. That's great. You play the basic swamp. Go crazy. But don't question me when I play the basic swamp. Or when I don't play the basic swamp. Sorry. Like, just because it works for you does not mean it's working for me. And that's why it is always, always, always important to not blindly go off Twitch chat and listen to your own experiences. All right. So we've got Snap Sauron's Ransom. I should have counterspelled this Sauron's Ransom or Flusterstormed it or something. But honestly, I wasn't really. I was kind of like keyed in on getting the Murktide down. But we kind of had another one of these situations where opponent just like clears my board very well. And I could have drawn and locked the Snapcaster. But you'd think here with like double counter spell available and them with 3 cards, I would be like clear to coast from here, right? So Odawara kind of messes that up horribly. Can't replay out the Murktide. That Defabricate would have been really good in the face of Odawara, but alas, we did not have the Defabricate. So we got Snap and Counterspell and Snap Counterspell. We got Flusterstorm, so I'm like, okay, I've got Shadow down. The downside of letting that Sauron's ransom resolve again is they get this little ring bearer text, which I completely forgot was a thing. So here they cast another Sauron's ransom. I'm like, okay, well, I have to give them a bolt. Oh, wait, they get to make Snapcaster their ring bearer. I can't block it. And they bolt me for lethal. So I spent the entire first match talking shit about Sauron's ransom, and then all of a sudden it kills me. So the irony. On to round two. Force pitch a striped Riverwinder, so it's living end. Our hand is not particularly good against living end. I thought Thoughtseize resolving would have been really, really nice. Can't get down a shadow yet. Definitely weighs off Shadow of Mortality. So let's see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. We would have had a Shadow down this turn with Thoughtseize, but if we had drawn another fetch or another shock, we could have had Shadow of Mortality down. Not this turn, but the next turn. If Thoughtseize had resolved. But we've got Drowned in the lock. That's non-zero. And opponent's got no creatures in their yard. But I don't think there's any reason to believe that this isn't living end. The Blood Crypt's kind of throwing me off, but at the same time, you could have Blood Crypt to just hard cast. What's it called? Hard cast Grief. Then they're gonna Shardless Agent into a living end just to try to kill my Shadow. I figured I was just gonna counter this because I don't have anything else going on. They're gonna have all the time in the world to set up if I let this resolve. So I'm just gonna kind of go on the upside of continuing to put pressure on, continue to hit with my Shadow. And in this case, I get to play out another Shadow, hold up Fatal Push. So if they go for another living end, I can just push my own Shadow, start the Shadow living end loop going, where they resolve a living end. I get back a Shadow. You know. So as expected, go for the outburst on my upkeep. I'm going to Fatal Push my own Shadow to get back a Shadow. It's not the most thrilling turn in the world, but you got to do what you got to do. Like I said, we were running basic Swamp over the Hallowed Fountain this league. Again, I would prefer the Hallowed Fountain because it allows you in situations like this to turn the corner more aggressively. So Overgrown Tomb does let them have double black to grief. So we were right that they were playing Blood Crypt and Overgrown Tomb to be able to grief. Opponent making the double block makes me assume that they've got another copy of Living End in hand. So I go ahead and cycle that Street Wraith. So if they do Living End, I get back Wraith and a Shadow. They get back Grief, Shardless Agent. Play out Murktide, because if I don't and they Living End, which I suspect they do, and they did, then they would just get to take the Murktide. This attack is my opponent, there's no reason for them to cast a living end because I get back Shadow, Shadow of Mortality, Murktide. So they're super dead if they resolve a living end. So instead, I attack with Shadow. If they block, then I'm winning this race really well because they can't attack back without it being a 3-turn clock with Wraith blocking one of the Shardless agents. If they don't block, I deal the 6. If they attack back, then I'm presenting lethal with Shadow. If they just attack like this, Shardless Agent Grief, I block Shardless Agent. take the grief, 3-turn clock. I've got lethal with Shadow on the crackback. If I find a removal spell for Shardless Agent, or I just force the chump block. If they attack all out to try to make it a 2-turn clock, Wraith gets to block something, and I just counterspell the next thing they put on the stack. Because I'm assuming they're just going to hard cast something to try to block here. And we called it. They cannot force a negation. They can't mystical dispute. So on to game number 2. Sideboarding against Living End. If it says kill a dude, it comes out. If it says counter a dude, it comes in. If it says exile a dude, comes in. It's like Turok, Unlicensed Hearse, Flusterstorm all coming in. Fatal Push, Dismember going out. So opponent's got double Outburst, Living End, bunch of lands. We're going to play out this Hearse and just like go ahead and eat the Oliphant and the Waker. If they do find something to cycle, then they can Living End for like one dude, but it looks like they didn't. So we get to nuke the yard and move on to match 3. So basic Swamp Thoughtseize has me thinking like mono black, not mono black. Very, very far from mono black. Because I was really wondering turn 1 when they Thoughtseized and took Dismember, like why on earth would mono black take Dismember unless it got like Shieldred? Nope, just a scammed Fury. Way less exciting. So we're gonna take an 8-ball to the face. Kind of feels like Hammer Time. We're just like, turn 2, take 10. Going to attempt to Bowmaster. I consider. If I was running basic Island, I could have fetched for the Island and considered off that, and then had the Watery Grave for the Fatal Push. So don't think that the Fatal or the basic Swamp was like a necessity right here. We would have ended up in the exact same situation. So Spyro. I really need to find an opportunity to attack. I should have attacked. Yeah, I should have attacked right there. I'm dead to Ragavan, but I think I need to incentivize my opponent to like go for an attack back and maybe give myself a chance to like shadow block. I don't know, shadow block Spyro, drown and lock the Fury, and take 2, go to 1, and have a chance at just like a lethal crackback. Because the longer I wait and let them like expand on their board state, the worse this gets for me. Now, they did have the Ragavan, so I would have been dead to that. But I still don't think that makes it like the wrong line. Like, I think right now I'm taking the play to not lose line instead of the play to win line. Then I get greedy here and I'm like, all right, I'm going to fetch and cycle this dress down because I need to find something, even though I'm putting myself like dead on board. Honestly, I got kind of greedy and said, oh, they haven't attacked yet. Why would they attack now? Well, the reason they attack now is because my opponent found a lightning bolt, and looky, basic Swamp not letting me cast counterspell. I was dead anyway, but I'm going to hold a grudge over this basic swamp regardless. Sideboarding against Scam, usually boarding out like some Thoughtseizes, some Wraiths, bringing in Turoks, Dothies, Unlicensed Hearse. Quite a ways off of Turok, so I'm not going to worry too much about that. I could also play or get basic island to play around Blood Moon here, but I'm just going to jam threats. If my opponent wants to play a Blood Moon, they can take 7 to the face and just be on like a 2-turn clock to Murktide. So we'll take 3 off Dothy. Hopefully just kill a follow-up. They are going to Undying Malice the Dothy Voidwalker, which means I get to eat it before it comes back from the yard. Untap, find a second Shadow Mortality. So here's 4 mana for 2 7/7s. Seems pretty decent. I guess Bowmaster into Spyro sounds pretty decent too. I do get to eat a Spyro out of the yard, so that's not nothing. And we do have this Murktide that's just like lethal in 2 turns in the air. Or 1 turn if you use your spell in hand. Let's rewind real quick. In case you weren't sure what happened here. So we have 1 spell in our yard, Drown in the Lock. So when we top deck this Fatal Push, we're able to just target something with Fatal Push. Doesn't matter what. But put Fatal Push in our yard so Hearse can exile both the Push and the Drown, grow the Murktide by 2, and we just have a lethal attack in the air. Our opponent's got a basic Swamp, so we know they can't Fatal Push, or I guess they could Dismember, but they're paying 4 life to reduce 5 damage and go into 1. The old turn 1 Scam of Fury, eh? It's kind of funny, like, Scam of Fury should be a pretty big deal because I can't Fatal Push it. But at the same time, I get to just like have Death Shadow. And Death Shadow is pretty good in the face of a Scam Fury. So a little back and forth here, a little testing the waters. A little, damn it, we have basic Swamp again and can't hold up Counterspell. All right, really hope my opponent doesn't have Lightning Bolt. Counterspell a Dolphy. I don't know why they wouldn't dash this Ragavan. My thought is they must have like an Undying effect, but then they just let the Ragavan die, so I have no clue what the last card in their hand is. And with Shadow plus Drown in the lock, I don't really care. Spyro, no row, and opponent scoops it up. Nice. So getting to beat Scammed Fury multiple times feels pretty nice. This is match 4, game 1. We were able to lower our life total quite a bit, which is going to be necessary based on the fact that we have multiple Shadow of Mortality. Opponent cycles a Lorien Revealed. So I'm assuming this is the new like blue-black ring deck. If you haven't seen this deck yet, it's running like Lorien Revealed, the One Ring, Bowmasters, Sauron's Ransom. It's just like Lord of the Rings deck. And then most of your typical like blue-black interactive pieces, Counterspell, Drown in the Lock. Fatal Push. You know. So this is the first time that I've gotten to play against this deck. I'm kind of curious to see what it looks like. Thoughtseize is pretty good. I kind of wonder if I should have just gone with the double Shadow of Mortality here. All right, so Thoughtseize sees Shieldred's Edict, Double Subtlety, Bowmaster, Force Negation, Drown, Spell Pierce. We go ahead and go for one of the Shadow Mortalities because we feel like they're probably going to have to Subtlety, which they do. Ditch the Spell Pierce. So we get to untap and have double Shadow of Mortality. Go for Subtlety on the first one. So I could have let the Subtlety resolve in like second Shadow of Mortality plus Dismember. And I think I should have, or like let the Subtlety resolve, dismember it, see if they go for Force Negation or not. If they don't, then I play the second Shadow of Mortality. If they do, then I just go for the Drown in the Lock on the Force and put the Shadow of Mortality back on top and then double Shadow of Mortality next turn. I think that would have been a way better line for me in the long run. Like, I'm not really afraid of going down too low on life to this deck. Obviously, I don't want to be in a position of them just having, like, Bowmaster kill me or something. But they've already seen 2 Bowmasters and 2 Subtleties. So I feel like it's a little less likely that they're going to be able to just, like, snipe kill me out of nowhere. And if they ever miss out on their protection, like if they don't hit more rings, then I am just sitting on like way more than a 1-turn clock. So ping in the face a little bit, and they're gonna scoop. I did say it on stream yesterday. I have underestimated how impactful Bowmaster can be against the ring. It's not always. It's not going to be like some lights out card every time. But if Bowmaster sits around like 2 turns with a ring going and isn't answered, even if it's just like draw 2, draw 3, and the ring's not answered, like it's really, really good. And you do have the chance to kind of like protect that Bowmaster. Like, for the sake of stubborn denial, it's kind of convenient that your opponent plays out a ring, you flash in a Bowmaster, they draw 1, you ping your own token, the token's a 2/2. Pass the turn, they draw 2, you ping them for 2, all of a sudden token's a 4/4, and you have stubborn denial available. So that math works out fairly conveniently. So give them the ring and a land. Unfortunately, they turn it down, take a second Sauron's Ransom and a Shieldred's Edict, which, me being stuck on 1 or on 2 lands, I was kind of hoping that they would go more for the ring option. But, you know, we'll sit here with our bad Tails in Defabricate counter plan. Didn't actually think they'd be running Damnation, so that was kind of interesting. Like, they're playing Subtlety, Bowmaster, I think a Snapcaster too. And I don't know if this list is, but I know I've seen some of these lists running Murktide. So to have Damnation in there as well is pretty aggressive. We do find third land, so we're not just like terribly out of things. Murktide would be a good pickup if they didn't have this mystical dispute. I have noticed with Sauron's Ransom so far, I had to double check when we were playing, but it does make it so like the top two cards or the top however many cards is what's revealed to your opponent, and the face down's on the bottom. My opponent has taken the face down, not just this opponent, but Sauron's Ransom opponents in general, have taken the face down like the vast majority of the times, even when I've shown good stuff on the face up. And I think it's like every opponent just snap takes the face down in a lot of situations. Like, oh yeah, it's going to be good. I'm going to take the face down. And I think the only exception was that opponent earlier in this league that revealed Counterspell and Bowmaster and took that instead of the double heat. All right, so we've gotten Mystical Dispute out of hand. Now we've got the second Mystical Dispute out of hand. Still just need like another spell. I would say another spell to hopefully protect the Murktide, but one ring, we've got no Bowmaster. I think that's going to kind of run away with it. But we get to go to game 3. Game 3 on the one lander. It's got the double Bowmaster, which is nice. Don't really want a counter spell. Don't really want third Bowmaster. Definitely don't want second Flusterstorm, so. I should have revealed the hand. Let's talk about Thoughtseize decision. 3 lands, Lorien revealed, which is essentially another land. Bowmaster, drown 1 ring. I think drown is the best take here because I can Bowmaster their Bowmaster, even if they Bowmaster my Bowmaster. But if I don't have lands, it doesn't really matter to begin with. And there's always the chance that, like, if I do hit a land here, maybe they just flash in their Bowmaster, and I get to, like, get my Bowmaster down under counter magic. Nope, we're going to go for Lorien revealed. So we'll kick off the party because I've got all these Bowmasters, and I know they have a ring in hand. So I kind of want to just, like, get something going. I know that they get to Bowmaster ping my token down, but I just have to find lands. Now, I was not expecting them to have Subtlety and another blue card as well, so that's a little unfortunate, seeing as how they get to untap into a ring. But it's fine. It's fine. We find third. Yeah, that was a Bowmaster we put back on top. So we're at parity. Sauron's Ransom, a Flusterstorm. Or Flusterstorm, a Sauron's Ransom. Sauron's Ransom catches a Flusterstorm. Should have just attacked with the army token there, because if they block, I can Bowmaster ping the army token and trade. But I think my plan was to wait and make them activate this ring. So I wanted them to activate a ring, and then I flash in Bowmaster, get the 2 triggers, kill down their army token. But they kind of went on this draw go plan of not activating the ring. And part of me Not gonna lie, part of me checked my chat to make sure this person wasn't stream sniping because I was like, you gotta activate the ring, right? Even if it's just two pings, like those two cards are a really big deal. But at the same time, I understand, like, I'm okay with them not activating it here. I don't think it's necessarily a stream sniping thing. Because if they activate it, I do get to shoot down their army token. I've got 4 points of power. They're at going to 10 life or less after a couple ring untaps. So I understand them not activating it, but part of me was like, bro, you got a ring, I got a bowmaster. Just turn it sideways. Just activate it. But we could defabricate a ring trigger. That's kind of fun. There we go. Yeah, and they're going to scoop to the second bowmaster. Like I said, I underestimated bowmaster versus the ring a bit. Like, obviously, two bowmasters versus the ring is nuts, but underestimated the first one, and it definitely showed right there that that first one kind of had the opponent on a little bit of lockdown. Didn't want to do anything into the ring, or didn't want to do anything into the bowmaster. Round 5, opponent reveals Giganta. So Blood Crypt or the Saga makes me think this is like Jun Saga. Could be maybe an Asmo deck or something, but I think Jun Saga is like the default guess anytime I see Giganta Saga. Verdant Catacombs could mean anything. Say Bowmaster, put a ping on the shadow. I say, cool. Here's a Shadow of Mortality. Like, if you're chump blocking the 4, that's pretty okay with me. It could be that they were afraid of dress down and they just didn't want me to like hit them for 13 or something, which is understandable. Underground River to help us lower our life total a little bit more if need be. I really liked Underground River. I've been pretty impressed with it. It's been really nice to chip away at my life a little bit when I didn't want to take big chunks. All right. So we get Thoughtseize. We know our opponent is taking 2 more off their ring next turn. So we're not like dead on the crackback to Ragavan Shadow Spear or something like that. I was not expecting them to double block. I was expecting them to just like chump one with the Bowmaster, keep the Ragavan, and have a hit back next turn. But since they chumped, I get a chance to untap with my dudes. Was also expecting them to flash in Bowmaster and chump again, but instead they just like took 7 here. I said, okay, so you're dead to ring trigger on your upkeep unless you draw into double bolt, but I've got that covered. So I don't know why they didn't draw on their turn in response to the ring trigger. And I don't know why they didn't flash in Bowmaster to have multiple chump blockers. But it's not my duty to question my opponent's plays. It is my duty to aggressively lower my life total to the point of casting Shadow of Mortality. So we've got turn 1 Dismember Ragavan, turn 2 Drown in the Lockup, potentially turn 3 Shadow of Mortality. So I like to think Shadow of Mortality, like I've said before, kind of fits the game plan in this deck fairly well. Because you get these situations where, hey, I just get like this chunky threat down. Turn 3, I got a 7/7. If I had a Stubborn Denial, I'd have Stubborn Denial up. Now, I understand there was a Dismember involved, but that also could have been like Wraith and Thoughtseize. There's some flexibility there. Attack down Rin. I could hold up Drown, but I don't think holding up Drown does a ton when my opponent's got this ring active. Like, there's a reasonable chance they're just going to draw the ability to play multiple spells. So sitting on one Drown doesn't really do too much against, like, my opponent casting 2 or 3 spells this turn. So instead, we'll just play out the Murktide, because I think, based on most, like, Delirium style Saga decks, they're probably going to have a difficult time getting Shadow of Mortality and Murktide off the board. Like, if they have double Terminate, that's kind of unfortunate, but they don't have Delirium for Unholy Heat right now. Unholy Heat doesn't even kill Shadow of Mortality. And if they don't kill stuff right now, then I get to untap with Drown. Like, both my threats dodging Fatal Push, Bolt. They don't dodge Terminate. Was a little surprised that they went after the Shadow of Mortality there. Mainly because the Murktide flying is very relevant. Yeah, I was like, I don't think you got it. The Murktide flying over like Tarmogoyf, Spyro tokens, Ragavan, whatever the case may be, I think is very, very important in that spot. So I probably would have liked to see them just kill the Murktide. Like, I don't think the Shadow of Mortality being a 7/7 is changing the clock any. But I guess if you think there's a chance you're going to have Unholy Heat, then killing the Mortality, drawing to Unholy Heat is probably fairly relevant as well. But anyway, decent league, 4-1. We saw, like I mentioned, the Defabricate and the Tails End in the deck that I never cast either of them. I really wanted to try out those cards because I was under that impression that they were going to be like live matches for them every time. But I just didn't see opportunities to cast them. I think if you wanted to run like 2 Defabricate in the main or something like that and have it as a Stifle more often than not, that would be fine. So Stifle a ring activation, like counter the ring on the stack, Stifle an activation if it's already down, Stifle like a Solitude or a Leyline Binding ETB, or just counter a Leyline Binding because it's artifact or enchantment. What else? Stifle a Fetch Land. That's the one I really want to do, is just turn 1 on the play, like fetch Shock Thoughtseize, turn 2 fetch land. Oh, you went to fetch, and response fetch and stifle your fetch. That would be the dream, but doesn't work out that way more often than not. I think there's so many like really powerful things happening on turn 1 that you're just not able to catch your opponent with like not doing anything. What else? Shadow of Mortality looked decent as always. I think people are really sleeping on that card. And then someone asked in one of the last videos about Orcish Bowmaster. Like, I know that Bowmaster is on that trend with Ragavan and the One Ring and like these really expensive cards that you don't want to pay for. And I will say that if you don't want to play the Bowmasters, you're going to lose some extra percentage points to the ring. But if you don't want to play them, don't want to spend the money on them, and you're looking for some like alternatives, what I would do is the third copy of Stubborn Denial, second copy of Dress Down, fourth copy of Fatal Push, and then the fourth card could be like a Brazen Borrower. It could be an Opt, 20th Land if you made it like a Fiery Islet or like a Canopy Land or something. Anything like that, I think would be serviceable. But if you're wanting to maximize your percentage points against the ring decks, like we saw in a couple of those games, Bowmaster, after they've gotten down a ring, still won us the game where a counter spell in that slot, we wouldn't have had an opportunity to counter the ring and it would not have been the same outcome. So just keep that in mind if you're choosing to play Bowmaster. You're going to have to be more reactive by nature against the ring decks and not let a ring hit the battlefield. But other than that, I hope you all have an awesome rest of your day. Remember, if you're enjoying the commentary, enjoying the content, leave a like, leave a subscription. Let us know. Otherwise, I hope you all have an awesome rest of your day. Stay safe. Enjoy some good food and company. I will catch y'all back live later. Adios for now.